Hi, this is Numeric Citizen. In today's video, something special, an interview with Manton Reece, the founder of Microblog. When I started doing this video series about Microblog, I wanted people to better understand what Microblog is, how they can take advantage of the unique features of Microblog. But in this video, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to have a peek at the guy behind the scene, the guy who has been working on Microblog since 2018. So I interviewed Manton Reece, and he accepted to spend some time with me. And so without further ado, here's the interview with him. Thank you for joining me, Manton. I'm very excited for this quick interview with you. Recently, I listened to a podcast episode from a podcast called People and Blog, and I really like learning more about your history, how you became to be a blogger, and everything that came after that. And so I wanted to go a bit further into this to make a complement to this podcast, because I like to have some behind the scene look at the guy behind a service like Microblog. And so we'll start to talk about a bit about your personal life, but we're not going to be too deep into that, but just to give you an idea of about yourself. So I read I don't know if you remember 43 Things, my website.
Oh, yeah.
Sadly, the website was killed in 2015, but I somehow found your bucket list.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things I wanted to have a follow up on that is you wanted to see a rocket launch. Have you been able to see SpaceX or anything of that?
No. Thanks for having me. Yeah, that's fun that you mentioned that, because I really liked what 43 Things had done. I just thought it was a really elegant, simple idea. And I think I even, after the site went down, I think I blogged a screenshot of my list from there so that I could remember cool. What it was. So somewhere on my blog, I've mentioned.
Yeah, I think it's there. I think I got it from there.
But no, I haven't. When I wrote that list, the space shuttle program here was still active, I think. And so my thought is that I would go and watch a space shuttle launch. The space shuttle's not a thing anymore. And I live in Austin, Texas. And, so it's not that far south it's actually a pretty far drive, but at the very tip of Texas, SpaceX, does their rocket testing and launches and everything. And I would love to see one, but I have not figured out how to make that work yet.
And if the site was still a thing, and I mean, since 2015 is like 8 years ago, did you have anything new that you would add to this? Because as we tend to get older, we tend to see life differently, and we kind of change our priorities. And do you have anything you would add to this bucket list today?
So I'm not looking at it right now, but I remember a lot of the things that were on it. And I don't have anything that I can think of that I would add. Like, a lot of the things that I added, I thought were pretty big goals. That were some of them were really hard too. Or not very difficult, but like you'd have to go out of your way, like a rocket launch. And then definitely the most ambitious thing I remember I had on that list was like the last thing that I could possibly do, which is to see, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but it was a Halley's Comet, or there was something that is not going to happen for like another 30 years or something.
Yeah,
and so
I think it's in 2061.
Yeah. So my goal was I need to live long enough, and that might not happen. I don't know.
Who knows?
I might not make it, but I can't think of anything I would add, because some of those, and I have checked off a couple of those things from the list. I know write a book was on that. And I do consider the indie microblogging book that I wrote, even though I have not actually got the print edition out yet. that is still in progress. I do consider that. I would check that off the list for that.
Would you are you planning to share it on platform like iBooks and Amazon and things like that?
To be honest, no, I wasn't going to. I'm trying to keep it simple. So right now it's online just at book.micro.blog. And I have a couple more edits that I've been making because so much has changed in the Mastodon world and in Twitter. Twitter, is now not even called Twitter anymore. So I'm not going to go through the book and rename everything to X, but I did add a few parts in my latest draft about Elon Musk and sort of the last 6 to 9 months about what's happening with Twitter, because I felt like that would provide some nice closure. So I wanted to finish that before I did the print edition. But no, I think I'm just it'll be a PDF and EPUB, and you can download it, and that'll it just keeps it simple. I can't really, I need to work on Micro.blog. I can't manage a
we'll touch on that.
Platform.
We'll touch on that. So the book itself is available on the book.micro.blog. I'll share the link in the video description. I think you're a traveler, or you've been in Europe for 2 months, like at the end of the 90s, and I read your recent post about that. I mean, the world has changed so much, and travel these days is so different. I think you've been to Canada, right?
I have, yeah. I've been to Montreal a few times, actually. I first went for the Singleton conference, which I loved, and I really fell in love with the city. It was great. And then more recently, and so I went back a couple times, and then more recently I went to Toronto. My wife and I went to Toronto and had it was just like a very quick 2-day vacation, and really enjoyed it.
Remember anything special about Montreal? Because I'm from Montreal right now.
Yeah.
If you don't know.
I forgot that, yeah.
Yeah, so do you remember anything about Montreal that you have you tried the famous poutine?
Yes.
You tried that? Did you like it?
Yes, I have. Yes, that was a big. Everybody said you had to try that. So yeah, we did do that. I think what I was struck by when I first went was that a lot of it does feel like kind of the old Montreal. It does feel kind of like Europe, which I loved. And I don't speak French, but I really loved it. I would love to go back. So I guess I've been a few times, because I want to say 2 or 3 times for the Singleton conference. And then I went back with my family once, and we kind of explored around, and we went up to Quebec City, and it was amazing. I loved it.
Quebec City certainly looks like Europe, France. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Did you do you remember the Singleton conference? Which year it was? Was it in 2010, something like that, or 2011?
That sounds right.
John Gruber was there.
Yes, I think I went to all of the Singletons. I think.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny, because I was at one of those, because since between 2009 and 2018, I was myself an indie iOS developer. I was doing a password manager. And this is a place where I don't remember seeing you.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But I do remember John Gruber. I recently shared a podcast where I share a story about John coming to me and asking questions about my watch. And I remember it was a pretty fun conference for sure.
That's great. I love hearing when I accidentally crossed paths with someone but didn't really know at the time. Funny. So that's funny.
I really don't remember though. Do you? I think when you look at Microblog, there's a lot of space for photography. Currently there's a monthly challenge, which I'm not participating with, but I find it funny to see those pictures of people sharing about a specific subject every day. And how is photography in your life in general? What's the place of it in general?
Yeah, I mean, I love taking photos. I've never considered myself a photographer exactly. I love taking photos. I love sharing them on my blog. And sometimes I go out of my way to capture a shot that I think is special, especially when traveling. I love taking pictures when I'm traveling. I've done a couple road trips here in the United States recently in the last year, and just seeing places I've never seen before and being able to capture them and just, post them to my blog. I love doing that. But I don't, I guess I mostly do it for my own self, just to like remember where I was. But I like sharing them too, but I don't think my photos are amazing. They're just like anyone else's photos.
Yeah, sure.
And mostly they're for my phone. I did buy, we had an old camera that we used for a while, but it was kind of, it was bulky and different lenses, and we never really used it as much. And so about 2 years ago, I feel like I really splurged on this, like really spent a lot of money, but it was the Sony RX100, I think. I can't remember. And so it's real compact. You could put it in your pocket if you have big pockets, but it also has great zoom. And I loved taking pictures with that because I felt like it solved part of my problem with bigger cameras. But still, 99% of what I take is just random pictures on my phone.
Yeah, it's fascinating because with today's iPhone, people are still buying a more focused device on photography, and it's less and less frequent though. But it's interesting to see and to learn that people are still buying those to have a experience while taking picture.
And on Micro.blog, we definitely have some great photographers and people that, they still take, photos on film, and they do all sorts of different things. And I love seeing that stuff. And it's kind of funny. Like I do think that Micro.blog, it's a very natural to have a blog and a photo blog and have photos on your blog. But when we first launched, the very first version of Micro.blog, it didn't even have a photo upload. It was just text. And looking back, I can't believe I almost didn't add photo support, because I was worried about just the storage. Like what if someone uploads 1,000 photos? What are the requirements? But of course, I love seeing people's photos. I'm so glad that we do that.
Yeah. So now let's turn to the big guys. Let's talk about the. Because I know you are an Apple user. I mean, Apple has been kind of very present in your life, in your technical life, professional life. You've been a Mac developer in the past, and you are still because you're maintaining the Microblog native application.
Yeah.
But sometimes I read some comments from you about Apple and things that you don't like about them. So I'd like to hear from you about Apple. How do you see them today? Do they have too much power? How they manage their or don't manage their developer relationships? So I'd like to hear about that.
Yeah, I do complain sometimes. I try to. I mean, I am still a huge fan of Apple. Like I always have been since the early days of classic Mac OS. Yeah, I became a Mac developer in the 90s. When everybody thought Apple was over, like they weren't going to be able to compete. And of course, now they're so massive, it's just hard to even wrap our head around like how many phones they ship every single day. It's incredible. And I do, as for like whether they have too much power, I do think it is a problem when one company they control so many aspects. And especially the thing I usually gripe about is the app distribution, because if you want to be an iPhone developer, there's no way to get your app out without Apple approving it. And I just think that's a problem. I think it can limit creativity, innovation, and every once in a while you run into problems where Apple is confused about what your app does. And so like, it might be stuck in review, you can't get a bug fix out to developers. So that is frustrating to me. It's interesting because it's mostly frustrating to me in theory. I haven't actually run into any major problems. Like our versions of Micro.blog are usually approved in a day. They ship. We don't have any problems. Every once in a while, like a few years ago, I think it was Apple was really starting to get serious about strongly encouraging people to use in-app purchase. So if you had anything you were charging for a service, they really, really wanted you to use in-app purchase. Of course, they say it's because the user experience is better for end users. But of course, if we're being a little bit cynical, we also know that they get 30% of all those purchases. So they have a financial incentive to make sure. And so we got stuck a little bit in that because they didn't approve something, you have to be careful. You can't link to like a payment page that doesn't. Yeah. So we don't need to rehash all of that, but I do get frustrated sometimes. And the good news is I really think as an industry, we're moving in the right direction. I think there's rumors that Apple will allow kind of side loading similar to what you have on the Mac, where you could download an app on the Mac without.
I was expecting that for iOS 17 actually. But I think they will wait at the very last moment where somebody's asked to put their weight and ask them to do so.
Yep. I think it's inevitable. I think it will happen. It's just, maybe not this year, maybe not even next year. I do think it will happen. And I've written a lot about this because I think it's actually, in my opinion, very freeing for Apple if they allow side loaning, if they allow people to download apps, because if there is that sort of outlet where a developer, if they cannot be approved in the App Store for whatever reason, and by the way, I'm assuming these are good developers. It's not like malware. They're not. Yeah, they just what they're building is just not quite in line with what Apple wants to see in the App Store. I actually think it can be good for Apple because Apple can be even more restrictive if they want in the App Store. They can be very, specific about what types of apps they want to feature in the App Store, because the developer has another way to get their app to customers. So I think we will get there at some point, but it is a little bit slow going.
Do you think that when you submit an app, I kind of guess the answer, but I want to have your take on that. Do you think when you submit your app, there's actually a human that will, or how much of the process is automated? Do you think?
I do think there's a human. Yeah, there's some definite automation at the early part. So because when you submit an app, it'll go through and it'll say uploading your app and checking, everything. And so there's some checks they definitely make to make sure you're not using private APIs or things that are kind of off limits or using the wrong SDK.
They can scan the binary and see if there is any call in your binary, right?
Exactly. So they do some of that, but then I really do think it goes into a human review queue and someone downloads it and clicks around. I don't know what kind of system they have. I assume they have some sort of simulation, like the iPhone simulator, where they can click around. I mean, to be honest, sometimes I think that's part of the. I got a dog barking here. Sorry.
I don't hear that.
Okay. So I think some of the inconsistency is frustrating because which review are you going to get? Are you going to get the one who is very strict about, oh no, this button is in the wrong place, like I'm denying your app, or are you going to get the reviewer that they got a job and they're just going through the day, your app launches, they approve it, they don't care. And so, but I do think there is a human there. I think they have thousands of people reviewing apps every day.
I hope they have some kind of a reputation system where the history of submission, past submission, builds a reputation. So if you are mostly doing the same thing over and over again from each release, then you won't get any attention from a human. But I would be very curious to see what's going on behind the curtains, for sure.
Yeah, I honestly don't think they have that reputation system.
Oh my God.
I really don't. And there's definitely, I've heard developers, I think Craig Hockenberry had a blog post once along those lines where, if you've been an iOS developer for 10 years and you've never released an app that is malware and that is trying to steal people's information, this developers trust them. They are trying to build good apps for people. Just don't be too strict. But I don't think they have that. I really think it's random. Yeah.
Wow. I know there's a profound change in the digital landscape with Twitter or X. I don't know. It's never going to be easy for me to say X.
No.
And I'm curious to see your take about where X is going that from today and how it is influencing the community on Microblog. Are you benefiting from X slow demise? And
I guess we are benefiting, and we definitely saw an increase in users when when Elon Musk took over the company. There was sort of a series of just bad PR, just like one after another, sort of mistakes, self-inflicted mistakes that they made. And unfortunately, when that kind of happens to a company, the narrative becomes that everything they do is wrong. And so sometimes they would do things that weren't even that bad, but because they had already built this reputation of like everything we do is wrong, that just became the story. But particularly frustrating for me was shutting off the API.
Yeah.
So for years, we've allowed you post to your blog, Micro.blog can send it to Twitter for you. It's just very convenient. And of course, I believe in the open web. I believe in open standards. Every platform should have some kind of API so that you can interact with it in different ways with different tools. And when they shut that off, it was very frustrating. And I don't think, in terms of the slow demise, I don't think they can really come back from this, at least with the current leadership. The X rebranding is a whole nother problem. Yeah. Like in theory, it's not too late. In theory, you could take what is Twitter and you could start to, he did the hard part and the really kind of sad part of like taking the company from, 10,000 people or whatever to just a very much smaller company. And then now you could, in theory, build it back, but I just don't see it happening. And we tried to keep the Twitter API going as long as possible. I even paid Twitter, for API access for I think 3 months, but then eventually we had to shut it down. So we definitely in Micro.blog saw an early, kind of influx of users trying to figure out where to go. Mastodon saw a huge growth in that time period too, and that indirectly helps us too, because on Micro.blog you can follow Mastodon users. So I feel like that all sort of benefits us indirectly. But yeah, Twitter, they're just it's in a really bad place. And in terms of moderation, it's taken a step back.
Yeah. If there is anything left in that respect, we don't even know if there is still moderation on Twitter.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I mean, sure, they probably have some kind of team, but it's impossible to know. They definitely. I mean, that's the problem with, like, I do think they probably needed to scale back the scope of the company a little bit. But clearly they've laid off so many great people at the company. Yeah, I would be surprised if they have a significant moderation team at all.
What if you were named as a CEO of Twitter? What would be the first thing that you would do on the platform? The very first thing.
The very first thing I would probably start a company blog. They have a blog, but I would start something where like the CEO's blog, where I was just transparent and I said, okay, here's how we're going to rebuild the company. And I would have a blog post just laying things out, because I think people want to hear a little something about like what your plan is. And I wish we would see more of that from big companies. We do see some of it. Like I like reading Matt Mullenweg's blog, the CEO of Automatic and leading WordPress.com. And I feel like he's very honest and I love seeing that, but I think we need to see more of that. So, and less like Elon Musk, sometimes you don't know half of what he's saying is a joke. Is it true? He's going to change his mind? So we're not, he has a great vision for SpaceX and Tesla, but for Twitter, I'm not seeing a vision at all. So I would do that, but then the next day I would open the API back up.
Oh yeah, I was sure you would.
I would open the API back up. That's absolutely the first technical thing I would do. And I would just apologize to third-party developers and say, I'm sorry, we've had this rocky road. 10 years ago, Twitter, even before Elon Musk, they said, stop building, third-party Twitter apps. Like we're moving to more of this, this kind of platform where we want to control the user experience because we want to sell ads on it.
Yeah.
So even though Twitterific, Tweetbot, these types of apps and Micro.blog were allowed, the writing has been on the wall for years that Twitter didn't really like these kind of apps. And then Elon Musk came and said, we really don't want this anymore. So yeah, I would open the API back up. I would apologize to developers and I would say, here's the vision for how we're going to make things more open, how we're going to encourage creativity on the platform again. It's hard.
Would you make it more open to Fediverse and
oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I think the right model for these platforms is interoperability with the Fediverse, and I think the idea that we have one social network or like 2 or 3 social networks that are the dominant social networks, I think is a big problem. When you have that concentration of power, like we talked about with Apple, but also when you just have so many users in one place, it can create, community management problems, problems of, not just harassment and spam, but misinformation, disinformation. Like it's a big problem where if you have it a little more distributed, every community can do a better job of figuring out how they should grow and adapt. So absolutely, you should be able to follow people from Mastodon, Micro.blog, Twitter. I know Tumblr had talked about opening Tumblr up. And I know when they, yeah, it's been, I guess it was last year even when they said that. And I was a little skeptical at the time, not with the vision, which I totally agree with, but when you dive into the technical bits of ActivityPub and how the Fediverse works, it's not something you can just work on in a weekend. It's hard. So it's not surprising that it's taken a while, but in a perfect world, 5 years from now, any one of these social networks would be able to, communicate and follow people between them.
Yeah, so that's it's a right time to talk about Microblog itself. I personally started using Microblog in 2018 when it, I think a few months after it was started, and I remember I was kind of excited about it, but I remember posting something that no, Microblog is not for me, and then I kind of left. But I left my account open since then, and then I came back during COVID and early 2020. So, and today, the way I see Microblog, I really like the fact that it's a great digital citizen where you can interact with other platforms. Like I have the list in front of me right now. You can cross post things on Tumblr, on Flickr. There's two. I think there's a. Okay, I think there's a warning for. There's 10 minutes for this interview. Okay, so I think there's 2 things that I find it weird to find there. It's LinkedIn and Medium. I don't see them fitting in the rest of the list. Why do you still support those platforms, even though Medium is kind of opening up a bit? How do you?
That's a good question, and I think those are a little strange, and I think they're strange in different ways. Medium, I'll take first because I think it's a simpler answer. I resisted adding Medium for a while because it's a blogging platform, and if you want to blog on Medium, just do that, and then you can integrate those posts into Micro.blog the other way. Like you can add a Medium feed so that Micro.blog will pull those posts into Micro.blog into the timeline. It's kind of the opposite of you post to Micro.blog first and then it sends it out a copy to Medium. But a few years ago, Medium really scaled back sort of the blogging aspects. They stopped allowing people to have domain names and things like that. And that, I believe, is when I added Medium, because if they don't allow your own domain name, well, post to Micro.blog, you have your own domain name, and then you can send a copy out to Medium for the followers that you have there. But like you said, they have opened up more, and they're doing some interesting things. I have no idea where Medium is going to go. But I'm happy to keep supporting it. LinkedIn is different. I guess people just ask me. I personally don't use LinkedIn. Like, I log in every once in a while, and I have people that have requested to follow me. But I don't really need that kind of tool in terms of like networking. I'm not looking for a tech job or any kind of job. I'm pretty happy with where I am at. So I just added it because people asked for it. LinkedIn does have an API, and it's popular enough that there was a lot of people wanted it. So we have it.
Yeah, I use it myself once in a while too. So you added Blue Sky when they launched pretty quickly, actually. But the one that you added even more quickly is Noster. I don't know if I pronounce it well. After that, Pixel Fed came. Pixel Fed, you mentioned it in your book, in your online book, as a great example of as the open web. So why were you so fast in adding Noster?
Yeah, great question. I think with Blue Sky and Noster, I really wanted to kind of make a statement that we are not going to be picky about compatibility with different, like, we're not going to choose sides with different networks. If there's an emerging social network and there's anything good about it, if they have any ideas that we think could make the open web better, then I want to support it. So yeah, it's really kind of like it's kind of a statement of like, we're gonna support it, and we're gonna see what happens. I think both Blue Sky and Noster have potential problems. I'll just say real quickly, I love the way Blue Sky has domain names as like a root part of their identity. I think it's super smart. I don't love that they've created a completely new API that's quite complicated in terms of federating with it. I don't know how well that's going to work. And Noster there's a lot of really interesting things about it. It's very elegant and simple in a way, but it's also overrun with crypto related, and like, if you're into Bitcoin, nothing against, that's fine, but it's very dominated by like Bitcoin and crypto enthusiasts. And so that it skews the user base a lot. I don't know if it'll be able to kind of go mainstream, but it's very interesting. And so, yeah, we just decided to support it, and we'll see what happens.
It's cool. It's cool, actually. So I'm guessing Microblog is taking a lot of your time. Actually, it's kind of your full-time job, right?
Pretty much. I do some other programming work. I'm lucky to have some other stuff that I work on, but it is a full-time job.
Yeah. Do you feel like being on call like 24 hours a day, 365 days a year?
Yes. I try to disconnect sometimes, but I do feel obligated to check in every day, basically. And people expect answers. People have problems with their blogs. And I'm sort of the front lines for everything. I would love to get to the point where we're bigger and we have more people in different time zones that could handle questions. Actually, this year in particular, I've honestly done a very bad job of responding to email quickly. I have a lot of email that I have not responded to, and I feel bad about that. I'm hoping to catch up. But yeah, it's a lot, running a platform that needs to be up all the time. And, every once in a while, like actually when I mentioned a road trip I took earlier this year, I went to a national park that had no internet, like no cell phone coverage. And it was a bit concerning being offline for 12, 15 hours because, what happens if I'm...
There was this episode where I think there was a certificate who expired. You got some help from somebody else, but I think there's somebody else working with you on Microblog, right?
Yeah. So I've been really lucky that Victor has been. Sorry, I'm just got my mind distracted. Sorry. I've been really lucky. He's been able to, I don't know why I said Victor, Vincent Ritter. My mind just completely I don't know what happened. Talk to him every day. Vincent, I've been really lucky that he's in Europe, and so he's in a
Yeah.
different time zone. And of course, he knows how to manage servers. He runs his own services, um, and uh, he's been able to jump in and fix problems every once in a while when I'm out of it.
Yeah.
So that was actually the original reason I reached out to him to work together, is because I was traveling. I remember when I emailed him, I was traveling, and I was thinking, gosh, I was just feeling a bit overwhelmed. Like, I really need some help managing the servers. And since then, he's come on and he's done the Android version and helped rewrite the new version of iOS and Android together, and it's been amazing.
Yeah. Um, if you look at the choice you made for the technologies you used to build Microblog, if you had to redo that today, would you make the same choices? Would you change? What would you do actually?
I think I'm mostly happy with the technical choices. I've tried to keep it very simple. It uses Ruby on the back end, MySQL, Redis, some pretty standard technologies. And a lot of it hasn't changed in a long time. I am not into chasing the latest, kind of programming fad, because I feel like you can spend all your time just rewriting everything. Yeah. So there's definitely technical debt. There's definitely things to improve. But we've iterated on it and we've improved some things. And Vincent's helped me too, like have a fresh pair of eyes at some of the back end, like how we're storing avatars, or just different things, how we're using S3, how we're using our Linux servers. So I think it's in a pretty good place. I don't think if I started over, I would make any just very large changes.
Yeah. There's 1 minute left on this call.
Yeah.
I think we will call you. I'll start a new session because there's a few subjects I want to touch with you. So sure. We'll take a break. We'll come back after the break, and I'll touch a few things I want to talk about for the future of Microblog. So let's get back in a few minutes. Thanks. And we're back from the advertisement slot. Okay, so there's a few things I would like to learn about your vision about Microblog. How do you see the future of the platform? What are the things that you would like to improve on Microblog in the near future, or maybe longer shots, maybe you plan to work on?
Sure. Yeah. And I'm glad we had that quick break, because I turned my air conditioning on, because I think I turn it off a lot of when I'm recording or podcast or something. And I think I was getting hot and my mind was melting. I can't remember people's names. I can't. But to get to your question, no, there's so many things I want to work on. And it's really, I have to like sit on my hands and like resist just adding new features every week sometimes. This year in particular, I've tried to address a bunch of like stability problems and just making things more robust, because that's something that's always going to benefit us. When people run into things that are slow or publishing errors, different things with templates and themes, like that can be really frustrating for people. And I know some people get really frustrated and give up. And so I've tried to improve. Like just a couple of weeks ago, I added like a little progress bar to the publishing. It's not perfect, but it's like a step in the right direction of giving people a little more information. So I really wanted to focus on a lot of that stuff this year. But we've also done a bunch with bookmarks and tags and some different features in Micro.blog Premium. So I don't think we're going to have any big features in the next couple months. But there are a lot of things along those lines that I want to work on with bookmarks and tags in particular. There's some things I want to do with like notes. We have a system of making highlights in web pages, and then we have the bookmarks. And I feel like there's something missing where we need to bring that together and have, for people that really want to use it, have like a note system where you can have private notes. And I think that will complete sort of
Yeah. Mhm.
that feature of where you have bookmarks and tags, highlights and web pages, archive web pages, and notes. I feel like that will be a complete feature, and figuring out how to integrate that more. So that's kind of on the Micro.blog premium side. There's a bunch of stuff on the timeline, the community side that we've talked about, improving muting and blocking and things like that. What else?
Maybe filtering the timeline.
What? Say again?
Filtering the timeline.
Yes. Yeah. No.
So
Yeah.
I'm
Things like.
following people from all over the place, from Mastodon and Blue Sky, and sometimes even my own stuff, because I want to
Mhm.
kind of do some quality control of what I'm sharing online
Yeah.
on PixelFed. But sometimes I would like just to still keep following that, but
Mhm.
get rid of that when I'm reading my timeline. So that would
Yeah.
be cool.
For sure, more control over that would be great.
Yeah.
And we have some interesting things on the back end. Like we have these concept of filters. So we have like muting users, and when we have this concept of filters where when you post your own blog, if it matches a keyword or a tag or a title or something like that, it can assign different categories.
Mhm.
And I feel like there might be some potential in there to expand. I don't know, because we have that filtering, and then you can add RSS feeds from different sources, and they can go to the timeline, or they can go to your blog. And like, there's so much we could do there.
Yeah.
It's always tricky because like one of the things with Micro.blog that we wanted to do was make blogging, like in terms of the user interface, is just as accessible as like posting a tweet. You type in some text, you attach a photo if you want, and that's it. And every time we add more sophistication, different categories and cross posting, and does it have a title, and we hear a lot of feedback from people that they want more control over the editing experience, which I totally understand, but I always try to figure out how to add it in a way that doesn't change the default. Hit new post, you have some text,
Yeah.
and that's it. Like as like we don't show the title field unless you've typed over 300 characters. Like that's kind of simple, but everything else is similar to that. Like don't show all these features, because I'm always worried we're going to overwhelm people. Of like, if we added every setting that people
Sure.
asked for, like the new post screen would have checkboxes everywhere. It would be great for power users,
Yeah.
but it would be terrible for everybody else. So how do we add that kind of stuff that you're talking about without making the user interface complicated? It's really difficult, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's the old story of Apple, actually. And Steve Jobs used to say that for every yes, there's 1,000 no.
Yeah.
I guess we're kind of in this territory.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I find funny with Microblog is I don't remember exactly the example, but I remember talking about a few things I'd like to see on Microblog, and I think in the same day or in the next few days, the feature was added, and there's this proximity with you guys behind that makes Microblog such a special thing in this old digital landscape. There's so many things that doesn't work well for those working on Twitter or those working on Mastodon, and things takes a lot of time before we get improvements, and Microblog in that respect is very special to me, actually. Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
I find this funny. Yeah.
I appreciate that, because I mean, certainly some people ask for things and it takes years, and they wish it was faster, but I do love that every once in a while we hear something and we can turn around a change very, very quickly. Like I never want to lose that aspect of, there's not a committee that's has to review every little thing, so it takes weeks or months. Like if we want to ship something, we can ship it very quickly. If it's something that's like, technically possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one subject I'd like to touch, but before that, I know that when you look at Microblog, there's a special place for photos, also for books, where readers, which is not my case, by the way, I'm not a big reader, but there's a lot of people who read a lot. You read a lot yourself. And so are you planning to add something like for movies or even podcasts or music to kind of complement all the type of media we can have.
Yeah. It really, when we added the bookshelves feature for tracking like what you're reading, one of the reasons, like you said, I love books, and there's a lot of people on Micro.blog that love books. Not everybody, but people that read a lot, some of them write and blog a lot too. So I feel like it's a nice compliment. But when we added that to make it easier also to like blog about what you're reading, so instead of putting in some data silo like Goodreads, you have it on your own blog. Definitely, we heard from people that like, this is great. Now I want TV shows. Now I want movies. Yeah. My answer for now is like, yes, we want to do that, but I want to make I want to kind of perfect the books interface first, because I think if we make it generic, where it can do any type of media, I think it'll be kind of watered down, and I think there'll be some things that won't be as good about tracking books. And I'm really happy with our bookshelf interface. And we have a separate iOS app called Epilogue, which I really love, because you sign in with your Micro.blog account, but it's all books. Like that. That's all you do is keep track of what you're reading and your reading goals, discover, what other people are blogging about. I really love that, but it's still not perfect. There's, things like book covers are kind of a big problem, where when you search for a book, you really want the book cover. Yeah, it's such an important part of like seeing the cover, having the title and the author correct, having a description of the book. And we're at a little bit of a disadvantage because we're not Amazon. We don't have every book data. So we're close, but I keep saying I want to make the book stuff perfect first, and then we will add movies and other things.
Okay, cool. So the last question I have for you is something that we don't talk a lot these days. Apple, I don't remember exactly, I think it's in iOS 15, they added a way to set up a legacy account. So if people dies, then somebody else can kind of take control of what you left behind, digitally speaking, I mean.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that? Because there's one thing that we all know is we're going to die, right?
Yeah.
So how do you plan for that? How do you manage the future of the perennity? I don't know if you can say that in English, of Microblog.
I think about this a lot. There's a lot of things related to this. One thing I will say that is not well understood is that although we charge for hosting $5 a month, if you ever paid for hosting, assuming you aren't a spammer or something, assuming you're just blogging and you're not violating the guidelines, when you cancel your subscription, we'll keep hosting it forever as long as we're around. And I just want to point that out, because I do think that is a little bit unique. Like if you blog on Squarespace and you cancel your account, it's done, it's gone. So I like that. I think things that are on the web should stay on the web unless you pull them off yourself. Like there's a lot of good reasons why someone might want to take their website down, and I totally respect that. But if you want it to be on the web, it should just stay there. So that's one thing. I also want to point out, I've thought and looked a lot lately at speaking of Automatic and WordPress, they just launched their 100-year hosting plan. I find that really fascinating. It's $32,000, which is way, like, I don't know who's going to pay for that. And I wouldn't pay for that. So I'm never going to ask my customers to pay that much for something. But I do think they are onto something with this idea of making a promise that, we're going to keep hosting this for longer than a human lifespan. No one starts a blog and lives another 100 years. You just can't do it unless you start a blog when you're 1 year old and you live a long time. So I like that. I want to do more of that. I will say we're not ready to announce something, but I have been working on something that will be kind of a complement to Micro.blog that will try to solve the domain name renewal problem. because one of the problems with the blog and keeping it up is not just the hosting of HTML and web pages and photos. It's if your domain name expires, which they all expire because 10 years is the longest you can register, then your website goes away also. And so I think there's more we can do in this, and I've been thinking about it, and we're not ready to announce anything, but I want to do more with this because it is on my mind. And that's probably the next thing that we'll announce, which will be kind of like an offshoot of Micro.blog. It'll be a little bit separate. And it'll also tie into like open source and like how we make sure that the code behind Micro.blog will outlast me. You know, getting back to like one of your earlier questions about I have to be there. I have to be answering all the questions.
Yeah.
Obviously that will not last forever. So like, who takes things on after me? What does it look like for Micro.blog to last longer, for the code base to last longer, for other people to take it over? So I've been thinking about that. We're going to do something. And then like to kind of like, if you pass away and then like leaving it to like your children to take over, that I think there's stuff we could do with that right now. And I haven't thought specifically about that enough, but we should probably look at what I know Facebook, has something like that. Apple, like you said, has something like that for taking over someone's iCloud account. We should probably look a little more at that and see if there's anything we can do even earlier.
Yeah, because I think part of the things that people should look when they decide to select a platform for sharing content, it's the how long is it going to last? I mean, it requires a lot of energy to write and share things online, and I think it's part of the equation that when you select. And so I wanted to touch on this this question.
Yeah, and I'll just to jump in one more thing, kind of getting to one of the things you said at the very beginning about you were excited about Micro.blog, you joined, but then you like, maybe this isn't for me, you did something else, and then you came back. We hear from people a lot that happens too. Micro.blog isn't quite right for them. They leave for a couple of years and then they come back, and Micro.blog is way better. If you wait a couple of years, like we keep improving the platform. It is better than it was 2 years ago, or even 6 months ago. And so part of allowing that to be seamless is making sure that when you leave, you can take everything with you. So like export in different formats, we import in a whole bunch of different formats. And so I think that's another part of making that seamless for people to feel like when they join, they're not stuck. They're not locked in.
Yeah.
They can go to WordPress if they want to. But yeah, I think about this a lot. I want Micro.blog is, I mean, we've been around for 6 years, so hopefully that counts for something. But similar to me not going on LinkedIn looking for a new job, like this is my focus. So I really hope that we'll be around for a very long time.
Do you think in a kind of a different subject, but as we can right now exclude a website from indexing from Google, for example, by dropping a file at the root, I think it's at the root of the website. Do you plan anything for people who would like to opt out of being part of the training of AI based like ChatGPT and large the LLM models? Do you plan to add such an option if it's even possible to exclude ourselves from that?
It is possible now. Just a couple of weeks ago, I know ChatGPT announced basically their bot that crawls web pages. They've given it like a user agent, so you can recognize it. And so actually, I think there's a couple. I know there's one or two Micro.blog plugins that you just install the plugin and then it'll opt your site out of ChatGPT. So I assume that other, large language models, Google, Microsoft's Copilot and those sort of things, I assume they'll have something similar. And yeah, I think that's really fascinating. You should absolutely be able to quickly opt out your blog. On the other hand, I don't think we should make a choice about that. I think by default, the web should be open, and people should be able to look at your content, even bots. But it should be easy for you to opt out.
So I guess the answer is yes. You're eventually.
Yeah, and the plugin. I mean, I really think the Micro.blog plugin is a good solution because I don't think we necessarily need like a checkbox in Micro.blog. I think you click on plugins, you search for ChatGPT, you install it.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be easier, but I think that's a pretty good solution.
Cool. So with that, thanks a lot, Manton, for your time. I know you're a busy guy. You're just moving your house, and
this is the last time this is my last video from this room. So we're in the process of moving. So
okay. So again, thanks a lot for your time, and I hope people watching will enjoy this interview.
Thanks for having me. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Manton Reece. If you want, you can share your comments and your thoughts below in the comment section. If you don't subscribe to my video, now it's the time to do so. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being there, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.